Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me to introduce myself. My name is Yose Armadhani. My student ID 18053021 and my major economic education. In this time, I will be presentation about the problems of inflation and deflation. I target this as my case project in the syllabus 8. Uh, in this material, there are several steps I will explain. One, introduce to introduction about the material. Three, uh, content. Four, closure. And five, conclusion. Okay, let's begin. Introduction. Meaning of inflation and deflation. Inflation and deflation are opposite processes in an economy. If inflation is an increase in the price of goods period of and service in general and continuously over a certain period of time, deflation is a decrease in the price of goods and services in general and continuously over a certain period of time. Inflation and deflation occur due to change in the amount of money circulating in society, like the law of supply and demand. If then the money supply in society increases, then its theory, its value will decrease even though it is nominally fixed. That is what causes a decrease in the value of money so that the price of goods and service rise. Meanwhile, deflation is the opposite of inflation. Deflation is a decrease in the price of goods and service in general over a period of time, monthly, quarterly, or annually. In theory, deflation or a decrease in price occurs in the way in the increase in currency exchange rates because the money supply in society decreases. Now, let's be talking about the causes of inflation and deflation. There, these are the causes of inflation and deflation. One, change in the money supply. There are several things that can cause changes in the money supply in society, including the monetary policy, like Bank Indonesia by lowering and raising interest rates, changes in the amount of banking resources, and the sale and purchase of bonds by bank. These policies are used to control inflation. Two, changes in the exchange rate of money against the US dollar. The, the exchange rate money against the United States dollar also has an effect on inflation. Moreover, at this time, almost all international trade uses the US dollar currency. Many government and private debts also use the US dollar currency. Like, if the rupiah currency weakens against the US dollar, imports of industrial raw materials will increase, which cause production costs to rise and thus encourage higher inflation. Inflation like this is also imported inflation. 3. Increase and decrease in production costs. Increase and decrease in the cost of production goods and services can also lead to inflation and deflation. For example, an increase in raw material prices will increase production costs so that inevitably the industry will increase the selling price of its production. An increase in the minimum wage can also push up inflation. 4. Changes in demand. Demand pull. Changes in demand to an increase or decrease in people's purchasing power can also lead to inflation and deflation. If the people's purchasing power is high and accompanied by increased consumption, inflation will rise. Conversely, if the purchasing power then decrease, for example, due to increase in income tax, deflation will occur. So, based on the cause of inflation and deflation, there are uh, sometimes like opposite. So, if this making inflation and then, however, the opposite can happen in the deflation. Okay, let's be talking about types of inflation and deflation. Apart from the consecutive factors, inflation and deflation can also be distinguished by the amount of severity, namely 1. Like inflation. Inflation has a rate less than 10% per year. This level of inflation usually occurs in developing countries which are in the development stage. 2. Moderate inflation. Moderate inflation has a rate of between 10% and 30% per year. Moderate inflation will make the economy worse. This is because the inflation rate will cause price to rise high, the real income of the people to fall, and to increase credit interest rates. 3. Heavy inflation. Heavy inflation occurs when the inflation rate is between 30% and 100% per year. At this rate, the price increase are difficult to control. 4. Hyperinflation. Hyperinflation occurs when the inflation rate accelerates to more than 100% per year. This condition will make prices skyrocket and money become worthless. Types of deflation. There are two types of deflation, namely strategic deflation and circulation deflation. Strategic deflation occurs as a result of the adoption of excessive consumption control policies. The policy is in order to stop prices increase in the market. Meanwhile, circulation deflation occurs during the transition from a stable economy to an economic downturn. This deflation arises because of an imbalance between consumption and production power, which causes a decrease in price. Next, effects of inflation and deflation on the economy. Inflation and deflation have a major effect on the economy, both positive and negative. It may be that no country wants deflation to occur, however, neither country expected to high inflation or hyperinflation. A healthy inflation rate is about 2 until 3%. Inflation of that size is considered positive because it can encourage economic growth, including an increase in wage and an increase in corporate profit as well as capital flows. However, if it is higher, that inflation will cause an increase in price so that it will be troublesome for the public, especially the lower class. Deflation is avoided because it has more negative effects on the economy. Some of the effects of prolonged deflation are the decline in economy revenues in line with falling prices for goods and services. Along with the decline in economic income, it will be followed by decrease by industrial profits, which causes a decrease in wage and layoff. Okay, now we begin to about case study. In this time, I will talking about the case tracing the causes of super high inflation in Venezuela. In several years before, we also heard about super high inflation in Venezuela that's quite booming on the internet. So I will take this case study to give my analysis about this hyperinflation in Venezuela. In New York, Compass.com, in recent times, Venezuela has been in the spotlight around the world. How could it not be? The country had become a rich country which got its prosperity from oil. However, in an instant, all of this disappeared in line with the drop in oil prices. For the fourth consecutive year, Venezuela's economy has contracted and inflation has skyrocketed. The opposition-led National Assembly announced that Venezuela inflation stood at 2,616% in 2017, and then in December 2017 alone it had jumped 85%. Quoting the Economist Thursday, many central bank economists and bankers call the inflation conditions experienced by Venezuela as hyperinflation. This term is usually used to describe a condition in which consumer prices increase by at least 50% in amount. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, projects that Venezuelan inflation will reach around 13,000% in 2018. Then, what is the real cause of the astonishing inflationary conditions that have occurred in Venezuela? Low oil price, declining oil production, and general economic mismanagement have weighed on the Venezuelan government. The state budget deficit reaches 20% of the gross domestic product. The exchange rate of the Bolivar currency also fell sharply. In the past year, the banknote with the highest denomination were raised to 100,000 bolivars. The Bolivar exchange rate has weakened 99.6% against the US dollar since the start of 2016. Although the new banknotes have been flowing into the economy profusely, the production of domestic goods have plummeted and import costs in local currency have fallen. In this combination, that makes consumers cannot keep up with the price of goods which consume to rise. Okay, let's now we will be talking about the closure. Like the case of hyperinflation that occurred in Venezuela. So, what the steps that should be taken by the government in case of hyperinflation are: one, using super tight monetary policy, like increase the minimum cash reserves, increase the interest rate, selling securities or open market operation, and perform selective credit. Two, using contractionary fiscal policy like raising taxes and reducing state spending. Three, establish special economic policies like attract foreign invest in the country or making capital loans abroad. So we said in this solution can take by the government to finish the problem of hyperinflation in Venezuela and around the country in the world. So this this solution can be used by the government and to be applied in the country. However, all this problem of hyperinflation does not want to be happen in the country. So like incident in Indonesia 1998 where we have a hyperinflation, price falling, uh, life is very hard and other condition what can be happen. So we hope the hyperinflation in Venezuela can finish and economic in Venezuela can be stable again. Okay. Okay. Now let's we begin about the conclusion. Inflation and deflation have major effect on the economy, both positive and negative. It may be that no country wants deflation to occur. However, neither country expected high inflation or hyperinflation. Hyperinflation can make life very hard, very tough, and running a business uncomfortable. This condition usually cannot be tolerated for a long time, often resulting in change in government or at least the issuance of new economic policies. Of the several episodes of hyperinflation that have occurred around the world, about half of them expired within a year. Moreover, only 18 of it lasted more than 6 months. So, based on all this theory and the project I have explained before, my analysis about this case is no countries want to hyperinflation can happen. So, what can we do to attract to protect the country from hyperinflation? I think there are several steps like government not too much spending or like something goods like oil or other government can make several several things like the government can make in like can make about in several terms like in the uh, another factor like pendapatan and other thing. Okay, I think that's all my explanation about this theory. About all my mistake my English still not really good, so I just want to learning again so I can improve my skill in English language. So that's all from me. Thank you and assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.